Right.
Good.
Everybody good?
Yes.
Feeling better already, ain't you?
Yes.
All right. Oh, gosh. You good? I figured you were. Well, last week I got this reputation, and well, I guess if you don't have critics, then you're not really preaching the gospel.
Amen.
That's the truth, Jason. If you don't have critics, you're not really preaching the gospel. And so I don't really give critics too much attention, you know. I know what I've got has changed my life. So come at me with whatever you want to. My life's been changed. So you're going to have a pretty tough time convincing me, all right? Just saying. So I don't really spend a lot of time addressing critics or, you know, whatever. And I don't even... I just kind of let my life speak for myself and for this gospel that I believe in, you know. But so saying that, I've said here lately, if I just heard this once or twice, I probably wouldn't think too much about it. And I still don't think much about it, but I'm just sharing with you guys. But because I've heard this a couple times, it's like coffee shop talk, or you know, 2 or 3 other places. I've heard people say that. They say, "Oh, that Cowboy church down there." You guys heard that, right? And they'll say, that boy down there, that cowboy preacher, he don't believe in the Old Testament. Yeah, you guys heard this? I thought it was hilarious. I'm like, first of all, anybody that said that must not have been here. Because, I mean, is that hilarious or what? So I'm thinking, first term or two I heard that, I was like, are you kidding me? That's crazy. And then I heard it like some more times, like even out, not even local, like where they really talk about me local, you know, like even further out where, and then I heard it a few more times, just like, this is hilarious, you know. So I thought then, and I heard it like a couple times this week after last week. How many was here last week? Yeah. Do you think Jason believes in the Old Testament or what, or not? You know, just like cut it off and just preach out half the Bible or something? I don't know. But here's what I think they're getting at. What they are confused about is Jason believes in the power of the New Covenant. The New Testament and the Old Testament that your Bible's divided up in actually means Old Covenant, New Covenant. Here's why I believe in the Old Covenant. The Old Covenant is revealing the New Covenant.
Amen.
I showed you last week, I went off the whole time on just Old Testament stories that's revealing the heart of God. The heart of God is not the Old Covenant. The heart of God is the New Covenant.
Right.
He had to have the Old Covenant to show you what it wasn't, so we finally give up on our own selves and realize we need a New Covenant. I believe the Old Covenant is showing the New Covenant, all right? Is that fair enough? I'm saying this on the World Wide Web and everybody else. Jason believes in the Old Testament. I think you can preach the New Covenant on every page of the Old Testament.
Yes, you can. Amen.
I proved it last week. I almost hit every page, I think. So if you weren't here, you can go on YouTube and look up last week. Southern Range Cowboy Church is on there. Jason believes in the Old Testament. The Old Testament reveals the New Testament in the heart of God. The heart of God is not for you to obey laws and be under the Old Covenant. I know I get in trouble for this. It's just, oh well, I can't help it. Because I found this out. The New Covenant is far superior to the Old Covenant. The covenant of love and the goodness of God and His love being unconditional is far superior to the covenant of obedience and law.
That's right.
There's a higher law. He said in the New Covenant, I'm going to write my laws on your heart. That's not the law of Moses. It's the law of love. The law of life and liberty. It's a higher law.
Amen.
For instance, one of the 10 Commandments is thou shalt not commit adultery, you know. You know you can go your whole life and not commit adultery, still not love your spouse? Come on. See what I'm saying? But if I love my spouse, I'm not going to commit adultery. You see you see what happened there? I went to a higher law, the law of love. We realize what love is. Guess what? If you realize what love is and you find that and you live in that place, you fulfill the law. You're not going to murder your brother if you love him. Right? So why are we even wasting time on the lesser? Why don't we just find out what love is and be transformed and changed by that?
Amen.
Is that fair enough?
Yeah.
It's the love of God. You encounter the love of God, and it's the most life-changing thing you'll ever encounter. And you'll have to get it for free. You'll have to get it and receive it before you deserve it. You'll have to get it before you've earned it. Before you've paid enough tithes. Before you've obeyed enough laws and rules and wear your hair a certain way and dress a certain way and all these stuff we've come up with. You're going to have to just take it. Well, I'm just going to keep on going where I left off. Is that all right? I found this story. I went through Adam and Eve and Noah and I went through the whole thing nearly, just showing you the heart of God for the new covenant in the Old Testament, right? So I thought, man, I pretty much left out David, so I can't leave out David. So I found this. I thought about, here comes Jesus on the scene, and Jesus' purpose, one of his purposes is to change the mindset of people of how they believe God, what they believe God's like. He came to reveal the Father. It's because we had an idea of what God was like based on the law. And the law was not God's heart. Right? Talked about last week. The day the law was given, Moses comes down Mount Sinai and 3,000 people died. It's not the heart of God. The day the Holy Spirit was given to consecrate the new covenant, 3,000 people were saved.
Amen.
Right?
Right.
His heart is the new covenant. And so I'm saying, this new covenant, I found. So Jesus' new covenant is how you're going to find out what God's really like, not the old covenant. The old covenant had God's hands tied because he had to operate according to man's performance. Simple enough? He had to operate within the confines of the covenant, which was based on man's performance, and we form our opinion of God by how he operated with his hands tied by us. Jesus came to straighten out our opinion of what the Father's really like. So he starts telling this story. He's telling this story to religious folks. Alright? You with me? He's surrounded by these religious folks that have this opinion of how God is. You can tell what their opinion of how God is by how they treat people. Alright? They're mean. They're mean. So he's going to tell a story like he's really trying to reveal this new covenant deal, what God's really like. And he's really got his hands full to change the mindset of a people and their opinion of what God's really like. Alright? So he's telling this story. He said a man had 2 sons. Right? Prodigal son. And said one of the sons came to him and said, give me my inheritance. You guys have heard me talking about this several times. Give me my inheritance. I want all's come to me. And he takes off, right? And he goes and he spends all his money. And he's impoverished. He's living in a hog pen. And he's down and out and broke. And he said, you know what? He said, he comes to himself and he said, my father's slaves are living better than I'm living. I'm no longer worthy to be called his son, but I'll just go back home and become one of his slaves, and I'll be living better than I'm living now. Right? So he rehearses this speech, oh, Father, I've sinned against you, sinned against heaven, and all this stuff, and he gets home, and before he even gets there, Father's looking for him, and takes off running, and just jumps on him, and hugs him, and cries, and has a big celebration, and the boy's got his speech rehearsed, you know, and he said, oh, Father, I've sinned. And the father never even acknowledges that kind of talk.
Right.
Never even acknowledges it. I mean, he's got his sin confession all lined up. He's practiced it. And the Father never even acknowledges that kind of talk. Jesus is telling this to religious folk who have based their whole walk with God on confessing their sins. Uh-oh. Sounds a little familiar today too, don't it?
Yes, sir.
Uh-oh. So Jesus is trying to show us what God's really like and what this new covenant really is. All right? So the son comes back thinking he's going to be a slave and a servant and just get by because he lived close to the Father, right? Not really be his son. It's like I lived that way being religious. I was in church my whole life, and I always said, well, you better serve God. You better get in church and serve God. So we had this servant mentality. I don't know. Huh? Anybody squirming? We have this servant mentality. So we're serving God like we're a bunch of slaves. Jesus comes to say, look, I'm not interested in having servants and slaves. I'm interested in restoring you as my sons. Kill the fatted calf. Let's have a party. My boys come home. He ain't interested in having any more servants. Here's what I found out. Once, when I was servant-minded and thought I was trying to obey because I needed to be a good slave, I mean, I acted the best I could when you were watching. Is it all right? Oh, no honest people in here? No. Come on. So when I found out now, you're saying, well, now wait a minute. When I found out I'm a son, I started acting like a son.
Amen.
See, you ever watch Bonanza? Huh? Old Hoss and Little Joe, and remember them? Oh, Ben Cartwright. He got more work out of the sons than he did the hired hands. You know why? Because they had something to inherit it, and they realized that they owned the thing. A son, they'll say, you hear me all the time, preaching grace so radical, I don't know anybody preaches it any more radical than I do. Never preach on works, do I? But you realize you're a son, and you'll actually provide, you'll have more works on accident than you ever did by trying to be a slave and a servant. You believe you're a son, you'll act like a son. Me and Father, we're father-son business. Ain't no slave business. So this is what Jesus was revealing, right? So I found this story in the Old Testament. I think it's about the same story. All right, it's found in 2 Samuel 9. All right, you ready? I wish Jeff could sing this song. I don't know if he does. There's a song kind of written about this, but there's a David. You all know, you've heard of David. David killed Goliath, right? Everybody remember David? You've surely heard David killed Goliath. You've heard that. All right, so here's David. After he kills Goliath, he gets wolfed off to the king's, right? He no longer staying out in the country with the sheep. Here he's going to the king's house. I mean, this dude's famous now. And so the king's name was Saul, and Saul had a son named Jonathan. Saul had a son named Jonathan, and Jonathan and David, they become best friends, right? So Jonathan and David, they loved each other, and they struck a covenant. Jonathan and David struck a covenant. They said, if one happens to either one of us, the other one going to be kind and show kindness to our family and our sons that come along. I'm paraphrasing the story, right? And so what happens is now, in these times when there's a king and his family is established there and the sons coming up are going to be the next king, and you've got a whole lineage of kings, and it's a family deal, right? You're royalty and all this. And so what happens now whenever a kingdom gets defeated and the king is killed by some other outside, so now there's a new king, what happens in this culture is the new king comes in and kills every descendant from the old king so that there'll be no chance of them rising up and trying to take back their throne. Follow me? This is what happens. So new king rises up. Everybody's heard King Saul's dead. King Saul's dead. There's a new king. Now David's the king. And so now they hear everybody that's kinfolk of Saul, they think that David is going to come in here and kill them all. Their opinion of the king is based on what they've thought about the old. So they heard there's a new king and they all take off running for their lives. Right? So Saul's got a son named Jonathan. Jonathan's got a son. So Jonathan's son is 5 years old. And they heard that King Saul's been killed and there's a new king coming. And they start grabbing suitcases and get all your stuff. And we're flinging stuff. We're getting out of here because we're going to get killed, right? So the little handmaid woman, she grabs up Jonathan's boy that's 5 years old. And they're hurrying and they have some kind of accident. And the boy falls and cripples his feet. And so he's crippled. He's crippled by a fall. Are you catching on? The boy's crippled by a fall because he's running out of fear. He's running from fear because he's believed a lie that the king is really going to kill him, but the king really made a covenant that promised he was going to be good to him. So years go by. And this boy that was 5 years old got crippled. Years go by and he's living down in, I'm just paraphrasing. There's so much to read, I could read the whole thing. You guys go back and study it, all right? 2 Samuel 8, 9. So here this guy's name, the one that was crippled, his name is Mephibosheth. I said it once, that's all you did. So that's his name, and he's living down in a place called Lodibar. Lodibar. Is the name Lodibar means no pasture. No pasture. So it's like there's no growth there. There's no life. There's no green. There's no prosperity there. It's like one translation referred to it as like the ghetto. So here this guy's living in Lodibar, where there's no pasture, there's no life, there's no prosperity. He's hiding out. Because even now, years have gone by, he spent his whole life hiding. Because if the new king hears about a descendant of Saul, he'll come down there and kill him. He's lived in fear his whole life. In a place that represents no life. He's lived miserable. He's lived way before, not knowing about the covenant that the king made with his father. He lived down there doing without because he believed a lie about the king, that the king meant harm for him instead of the king meant good for him.
Come on.
Awesome. So David says one day, the king, probably just thinking about Jonathan. Jonathan was killed with Saul, thinking about, man, I miss my buddy. And he asked one of the servants there, he said, is there no descendants of Saul left? And there was one of the servants there in the palace that was still there from when Saul was there. And he said, there is one. There's the son of Jonathan. And you got to understand, David loved Jonathan. I imagine what his heart did when he found out there was a son of Jonathan. I'm telling you, there's too much of it. So David finds out there's a son of the one that he loved. And he said, let's go get him. Yeah, he's down. So you think about this. So David's going to go down to Lodibar and get this boy. Now you think about the way this boy's lived. He's a man. He's a man now. You think about it, he's lived his lifetime hiding from the king. Now you imagine, I'd say if the king shows up in Lodibar, it's not a secret. I'd say that probably, whoa, what's happening? I mean, the king's pulled up. I'm sure he's got an entourage and everything else, and everybody's probably freaking out. And so here's, what's his name? And the king's coming, you know. And so I'm saying David. Well, let me just read this part. Let me just read this part. It says, Mephibosheth, the son of Jonathan, the son of Saul, came to David and fell on his face and prostrated himself. And David said, Mephibosheth, he said, here is your servant. David said to him, do not fear, for I will surely show kindness to you for the sake of your father Jonathan, and I will restore you all the land of your grandfather Saul, and you shall eat at my table regularly. Again he prostrated himself and said, what is your servant that you should regard a dead dog like me? Here the son of Jonathan said, what is your servant that you would regard a dead dog like me? Listen to David's response. Then the king called Saul's servant Ziba and said to him, all that... You didn't catch that, so I'll fill you in for it. He didn't even acknowledge that kind of talk.
He moved on.
He just moved on to restoring everything that was originally supposed to be his in the beginning. He said, all of your grandfather's land, I'm giving it to you. All of your grandfather's servants, they're now your servants. They're going to till your gardens. They're going to work in your fields. They're going to build your houses. They're going to restore everything that was originally intended to be yours. Mephibosheth expected death, lived in fear, all because he misunderstood that the king really is kind and made a covenant to show kindness to him. Lived in Lodibar, did without. Now listen to this. He said, you and your sons, he tells the servant that was King Saul's servant, I've given your master's grandson. You and your sons and your servants shall cultivate the land for him. You shall bring in the produce so that your master's grandson may have food. Nevertheless, Mephibosheth, your master's grandson, shall eat at my table regularly. I wish I had time. I'd go right into communion on it. Now Ziba had 15 sons and 20 servants. Then Ziba said to the king, according to all that my lord the king commands his servants, so your servant will do. So Mephibosheth ate at David's table as one of the king's sons. Mephibosheth had a young son whose name was Micah. And all who lived in the house of Ziba were servants to Mephibosheth. So Mephibosheth lived in Jerusalem, for he ate at the king's table regularly, and he was lame in both feet. And he was lame in both feet. Crippled because of a fall, but still yet, because the king made a covenant with someone else, he got to partake of the covenant, was brought into the house and eat at the table. I'm showing you a picture of the new covenant.
Amen.
In the Old Testament. It's a picture of Jesus, the covenant that he made with his Father. See, here's why you can't mess up the new covenant. It wasn't made with you.
Right.
That's right. Thank you, Jesus.
Here's the good news. You can't break the new covenant. Oh, you could break the old covenant because it was made, you were part of it. It was cut with man. New covenant was cut between Jesus and God.
Amen.
Praise God.
Yes.
New covenant was made between Jesus and God. And because of this covenant, even with your crippled self, you can sit at the table.
Amen. Yes. Yes.
You know what? When you sat at the table, his feet are under the table, he looked the same as everybody else.
That's right.
That's right. Praise God.
Just like one of the sons.
Thank you, Jesus.
It's time we stop running and hiding because we think we're crippled in some way. Because we believe that the king is judging us based on some old covenant of your law breaking and your performance and your behavior. I don't know if y'all have been here. We believe this and even say you're not way out there like the prodigal son living in a hog pen physically and all this kind of lifestyle. There's that too. But I'm saying you've been religious your whole life. You've been in church your whole life. He dealt with the older son too.
Right.
You still have that same, you know, the name of Mephibosheth means from the mouth of shame. Here's what I'm saying. You live your whole life going to church. You can live your whole life trying your best. You can live your whole life reading your Bible, listening to Christian music. But if the law's still part of it, And the old covenant's still part of it. You're not cutting it. And you can put on a show and raise your hands. Sit on the front row if you want to and act all spiritual. You know deep down, according to the law, you're not cutting it. So condemnation comes in, and it's even subconscious, and it operates in your life. And it'll keep you living in Lo-debar. Because you'll have a wrong opinion of the king's kindness is what he wants. He's not wanting to come judge you. He's not wanting to come kill you. He's not wanting to come bring up your shame. He's come to get you out of Lo-debar and set you at the table.
Praise God.
And He's going to stick your crippled feet right up under there. And He's going to treat you like a son and restore everything that was originally supposed to be yours.
Praise you, Jesus.
I'm saying, I'm just going to keep telling this because it's plucking that shame up out of there. That shame will keep you at a distance. You don't have to carry no shame no more. I'm not talking about wild living. I'm talking about condemned church folk.
Yeah, right. Right.
Or both, I guess. But condemned church folk is harder to get delivered than
Yes, they are.
anybody's going to come to the end of that. Hardest thing to get set free from is religion.
That's right.
We've been taught it's still up to us and about what we do. It's not about what you do. Old covenant was about do. New covenant's about believing
Amen.
what He did.
Yes.
It's already done.
Yes.
Struck a covenant with God and put me in Him. See, God and Jesus made a covenant, and then He put me in Jesus. That's why I can't break the covenant. I wasn't in on the covenant. I'm in Him. See, my performance didn't qualify me for the covenant. My law keeping didn't qualify me for the covenant. None of my behavior or my good performance put me in the covenant. Since my good performance didn't put me in, my bad performance can't put me out.
Amen.
Come on, we believe this.
Amen, that's right.
And we thought, well, I'm going to try harder. Man, I owe God everything. I guess I'll just be a slave. Come on, that's the way we thought. What religion will do to you. I say, we just believe the new covenant. Say, I'm a son. I'm a son. He scooted me right up there at the table just for Jesus. Right there next to Jesus. I'm sitting at the table. That big old king's table, that big king's table, you can't even see my brokenness. Have I got the right bunch?
Yes.
Hey, we're going to be son-minded, aren't we?
Yes.
Good word.